everyone, I'm Sarah O'Sullivan, Director of SOS Education Consultancy. We've been around for about 10 years here in Latin America, offering support to international universities, schools, government agencies, edtech companies, basically any education entity outside of Latin America that would like to have greater engagement here in Latin America. We offer support in the form of market research, strategy building, events management, public relations campaigns, basically whatever they need to have greater engagement. Over the past 10 years, we've represented many universities, many European universities, and I suppose within partnership agreements, what we'll very often have is a clause that allows for fee-free reciprocal student exchange, often at the undergraduate level, often possibly at postgraduate level, but oftentimes at an undergraduate level. And what we find in these partnerships is that very often there's a lot more students from Latin America that are traveling to Europe than vice versa. And I suppose to try to understand that, I've spoken on end to many. I understand it's frustration for Latin American universities who'd like to receive more international students. I've spoken on end to a lot of partners across Europe and in other international universities. I suppose, particularly in the European perspective, young students in Europe, they have this option through Erasmus to travel to partner universities, to spend a semester or 2 semesters in another country studying in a partner university. And with funding, with the stipend funding available from the European Union. But what many of my clients, of our clients would find or would report back to me is that even those mobilities that are available to students, a student might be in Ireland and they have an opportunity to go to Spain or to go to France or to go to Portugal, that sometimes it can be difficult to even motivate the students to uptake those opportunities. And then there is this belief that these students that can't be motivated to go to France, it's very hard to motivate them to go to Latin America. But I wonder, and I would pose the question to Latin American universities that are listening today, you'd like to receive more students from outside of Latin America. What exactly are you doing to achieve that? For example, when my international university clients, when they come to visit Latin America, maybe for a student recruitment event or maybe for a conference or something like this, we'll always organise some sort of partner institution visit so they'll have an opportunity to speak to students and to pass the university messaging across to students. And what I would ask those people listening to us today, when you were visiting Europe, when you're in the US, how are you communicating to students? How are you recruiting students? Do you have a recruitment strategy? Have you identified all of your unique selling points? Do you have the infrastructure here to receive these students? Have you fully thought it out? And if you have, then what are the steps in this recruitment strategy? Are your partners doing enough? Is there enough happening within the partnerships that you have? Do your partnerships have a 1-year, 3-year and 5-year strategic goals identified and people responsible for actions under those goals? Because all of these things are important. If we want, the whole concept of partnership is that we're bringing together equals and we are sharing knowledge and we're sharing experience and we're sharing mobility. So if it's skewed, if it's imbalanced in one way rather than the other, rather than equal, then that should be addressed. So I think there's definitely work to do. I would say, I come from a journalistic background myself, so I do like to have a bit of data. So I just had a quick look at the UNESCO statistics for global flow of third level students, and we can see, for example, Colombia sends out approximately 57,000 students per year and receives 5,000. So only about 9% of the amount of students that Colombia sends out, they actually receive back in. For Brazil, they send out 89,000 students per year, third level mobility students, and receive just over 22,000. There's a big imbalance there. Then we look at Argentina. Argentina sends out 10,000 students per year and receives over 120,000 students per year. I think a lot of those students would come from other Latin American countries, but Argentina, the balance has gone the other way in Argentina. Similarly, in Chile, Chile sends out about 18,000 students per year and receives about 13,000 students per year. I'm Irish, so I had to look at the Irish figures as well. In Ireland, we don't have the balance perfectly right either. We send out about 15,000 students per year and we welcome about 24,000 students per year. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done to address this balance issue, and I think that is to do with each international office reviewing their own recruitment strategies and policies and plans and preparedness to receive international students. What are the recruitment moments where you're getting access to speak to students, and what's happening within your partnerships, and maybe review some of these partnerships to at least to try to motivate these students in your partner institutions to come and spend some time in Latin America. Why is it important to balance the student mobility between institutions and countries? Well, it's massively important. Planet Earth, for all of the problems that planet Earth has, and climate and income inequality and poverty and all of this, if we continue to have a brain drain where the best talents and minds and researchers are going to a small few countries, it doesn't work out. It doesn't balance out. So it's really, really important that we have this mobility, so that in each country and in each institution there can be a real sense of thinking global, global research, global teaching. It's all very important. Cross-cultural learning, even in terms of the level of preparedness that a student who has done mobility will have in terms of when they go out into the working world. We don't live in a monocultural world. We don't live in a monocultural society. So it's really important that we have this exchange and interchange and mobility, so that we can have shared experiences, and we can work to better our policy, work to better our practice, work to better our teaching and learning, and as well, come up in the rankings, because we have this internationalization, these international policies in place. Recently, for example, we brought over a group of academics here to Brazil from Europe, and their area of research was in special and inclusive education, coming from the European perspective. And it was fascinating to introduce them to researchers here in Brazil, and to see how much shared experience they have in common, and just the exchange of knowledge and the exchange of ideas and experiences is sublime. It cannot be praised highly enough. It's really, really, really important. And I think there are certainly limitations. There are often financial limitations. There is the limitation of distance. There's often the limitation in the minds of an international student that has no experience of Latin America. They might think, well, Latin America is dangerous, and there's all these stereotypes that exist and that are perpetuated through the media and all the rest. So I think certainly in this moment we are now, we've been through this horrible couple of years of the COVID pandemic, which forced a lot of our learning to go online. I think, and a huge amount of universities are taking advantage of this. But the opportunity that exists to, even if we're not getting students on campus just yet, the opportunity to really align classrooms in Latin America with classrooms in Europe, with classrooms in Australia, with classrooms in Canada, in the US, wherever it might be, so that this valuable interchange begins to happen between researchers, between students. I think that's a really good starting point. And I think certainly what I'm seeing, I mean, there's huge opportunity through COIL for this online virtual collaborations. And I think there can be a resistance amongst academics. They say, oh God, it's more work and this sounds complicated or whatever. So I think, as international offices, we need to kind of have to break down those ideas as well, that this kind of global classroom idea does not need to be difficult. But I suppose it's important that we have the buy-in from the full academic community in our institutions if we're going to proceed to create a step-by-step plan towards the type of internationalization we want. What are our goals? What are our objectives? It's all coming back to strategy all the time. What do we hope to achieve? How do we hope to achieve it? In terms of the benefits for institutions and countries to have their students study here in Latin America, I mean, I first came to Latin America 20 years ago with my backpack, and that experience changed my life forever. I moved here 14 years ago. So I think it's the exposure to new cultures. It's breaking down a lot of preconceptions that people have. It's identifying and acknowledging that we live in a globalized world and that there's so much value. You look at the size of the rainforest here, you look at the size of the land here, and there are huge opportunities for researchers and for students in so many areas. The wealth of research quality in this region is huge. From my experience of 10 years working in Latin America, what I've seen is phenomenal in terms of research in many areas. So I think it can only improve research, it can only improve learning, it can only improve society once we have this proper mobility, actual factual mobility to all regions in the world. So we address this imbalance. So I've spoken about being prepared to receive international students, and it's really important to fully think out what does an international student need. Do you have modules in English, for example? Do you have what support services do you have available for international students? Is there accommodation available for international students? What about visas? Is there somebody to support? So there's a lot of if you have no experience of receiving international students and you want to start receiving international students, it's really important that this this reception part is very well planned out. I will mention here a project that my consultancy, SOS Education Consultancy, has recently launched here in Latin America. Basically, we are identifying Latin American universities that offer modules in English that would like to receive study abroad students from the US. We have a portfolio of universities that have full federal funding for these undergraduate level students to spend one semester overseas. Currently, they don't have Latin American partners and they're seeking Latin American partners. So if anybody's interested in this opportunity, please get in touch with me. I'll arrange a further meeting to explain it a little bit further. But basically, what we do is, before we will identify partners that can start to send students that have full federal funding from the US government, we will do an audit, we will do a study abroad audit. So we will ask you to show us all of your plans and policies in terms of picking up an international student from the airport, who's going to look after their well-being, where are they going to stay, all of these different details that matter so much. So we do a full audit and we do what we call a study abroad readiness report. And once we're satisfied that the partner in Latin America is ready to start receiving fully funded students from the US, then we will identify 5 partners in the US for you to partner with, and they will then start to send the students. So if anybody wants further information on that, please do let me know, please do get in touch. The opportunities are there, and I think by developing a solid strategy, a solid recruitment strategy, we will start to receive more students from all around the world here to institutions in Latin America. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attention, and have a good day.
Hello, everyone. My name is Angel Ahmed, and I am the CEO of GNet, a global consulting company. We have offices in the US as well as in Asia. I've spent the past 15 years of my time working around the world, recruiting, being a world warrior, recruiting for different universities, helping to develop partnerships and strategies for international mobility, worked with large institutions as well as smaller colleges and private high schools on their recruitment strategies. So I'm very excited to present to you today and to present with this amazing team here a few of the questions that I have aligned for myself when it comes to international recruiting. What are the components that your recruitment strategy should consist of? So I think one of the most important things is going to be looking at your internal data. So a lot of times universities will start, it's a big world out there. So many times you have to start internally. So I call it internal internationalization. So you want to identify with your data where students are coming from. So looking at how many applicants, how many leads, how many enrollments have you received internationally, and then diving down into the data and looking at where were they from? What schools did they attend? How did they hear about us? I think what's most important when you're going to start to work in international recruiting is to look internally. Also looking at your faculty, identifying how many of your faculty are from overseas or maybe from different countries. Looking at all the internal components within your university when it comes to internationalization is a great way to start and begin. Once you've done the internal internationalization, you want to look externally, looking at what are the top sending countries around the world, who actually sends to my country, who sends to my city, where are those students coming from? So within your country, in the US, we have something called the Institute of International Education, which actually tracks data on student mobility and visa issuance. And I think this is a good way to start, is looking at the data of students coming into your country. Also looking at what programs are interested in them. There's a lot of great international conferences and international fairs to start to activate your recruiting channels. But I think you want to have that analysis on your country and understanding where students are coming from and what is happening at other universities. International is a very friendly market. Many times you can call up other universities or ask for advice from different international experts that will give you insight on what's happening. And then also government data. Government data is going to be really important to look at, because how are visas issued? How are students coming into your country? That's something that's really important as well. So I definitely think those would be the first steps of internationalization, looking internally within your institution, looking internally within your country, looking at what the mobility data looks like. Analyzing that data is most important when you're starting your strategy. Then as you go externally, there's different recruitment channels. As I said, there's many conferences that you can attend internationally. There's also strategic partnerships with other universities and high schools you can start to develop, as well as international recruitment agents that will help you in the process when it comes to recruiting students from different countries. There's also many education fairs, student fairs that will happen around the world. One of the things that I always advise my university partners is, before you go and attend a lot of fairs and send somebody around the world, is look at your resources internally, and then also identify working through agency partners is a great way to start to begin your strategy, because those agents are already working with students in country. They're looking for schools to attend. So activating that specific recruitment channel is important as well, working with international agents. The other question, what areas of the institution would be involved in the design and execution? Again, I definitely think getting leadership on board. International is a long-term strategy. It is not a short-term strategy. When you're talking about recruiting students from all over the world, you definitely have to have the approval and the acceptance and support from your leadership. Leadership will be really important. So whether that's the president, your provost of your school, making sure they understand the benefits and the complexities of internationalization. Once you've done that, I definitely working with your marketing team. The way you communicate to students in Asia is very different than how you communicate to students in Latin America. So working with your marketing team to understand these different demographics is going to be really important. So I definitely would say leadership, marketing. Then you want to look at admissions. What's the process to be accepted at your university? What's the process to enter the country? Those are important steps for you to understand as you begin your internationalization strategy. The other component is working with your faculty. Many times faculty depending on where they've studied, may have insight into these different countries. So I definitely think it's a full strategy when you're looking at your internal operations. Leadership, marketing, admissions, and faculty are very important. You also want to look at student services. Where are they going to live? Where is the housing going to happen? And I know many times students, if you don't have housing on campus, they do look at homestay opportunities. That's very common within the international audience, where students will stay at homestays. I do know universities that have utilized faculty as for homestay and university staff for homestay. So those are things that you want to set up a robust student services for international, because a part of coming and studying at your university is also the culture of being in your country. Many times that's why students want to go abroad. It's not just for the academic experience, it's for the life experience, it's for the culture experience. So it's important to have all aspects of the student journey involved in the design and the execution of your international strategy. But it starts at the top, right? So the top of your leadership being involved is so important. Also, budgeting, this is a long-term plan. It's not going to happen in 1 year. It's not going to happen in 3 years. It's a long-term strategy to recruit from these different countries. I think one of the next questions I have is, what processes should a university that wants to start recruiting international students review, and how often? I definitely think the first thing you want to look at is your marketing process, understanding how you're attracting students, understanding your brand, having language translations. These are, as you begin to target specific countries, you want to look at your processes through the entire funnel. From marketing, what does our brand look like? You also want to look at admissions. What is the process for international students? Many of them speak different languages. Maybe they need English language. Maybe they need Spanish language in order to study at your university. How are you communicating to them now? That's going to be really important. Also, through the funnel, what does their student journey look like, and what are the processes involved? Your domestic processes may not work with international students. And I think that's something that universities have to keep in mind. So I would say internally examining the entire funnel of the student's journey is going to be something that you want to look at. Specifically with recruiting, it's going to be your marketing practices, and even involving partnerships. Many times agents will start working with universities, and then they don't have a point of contact. They don't have a person within the university that they can reach out to. And I think having partnership managers, international partnership managers within your university is going to be really important when you're starting the recruiting. One side is going to be your marketing, your lead generation, your admissions process for international. But then the other side is who's managing those relationships? Who's managing the agencies that you've signed? Who's managing the universities that you have a partnership with? I hear a lot of schools say, well, we have, 20 different international partners. We've signed an MOU. What does that mean? What are you gaining from that partnership? Is it an exchange? Are you leveraging your strengths? Are you able to recruit from that partner? And I think that's an important process. Partnership management, relationship management, so important in this industry, because you could sign agreements, but that does not mean that students will come through those agreements. So very, very important. My next question is, how do you identify and prioritize potential markets in an international recruiting strategy? So I think what's going to be important when you're looking at your data is identifying where students are coming from. The world is very big, and many times universities will think, oh, I'm going to just recruit students from Europe. It's really important to look at the data coming into your country, and also looking at the data from that country. Where are their students going? I know many times different governments will track student mobility. And I think taking a deep dive, whether it's working with the Ministry of Education in that country or a third-party resource, to really understand how many students are coming, are traveling abroad and studying abroad from that country is going to be really, really important. So, a lot of times when you're going to go into a market, the research ahead of time before entering that market is going to be so important. Looking at your internal data, as well as looking at data coming to the country, as well as the sending country. How many students really travel abroad? You have big countries like China, where there are hundreds of thousands of students will study abroad. And then you have smaller countries, like Pakistan, where it's not as many students traveling abroad. So it's important to understand where those students are going, what type of visa process is to enter your country. Those are really important first steps when you're starting to activate your recruiting channels. The next question I have is, what are the main recruitment channels that a university should consider, and how do they complement each other? So I think when you're talking about recruitment channels, I would definitely say there's several different channels that you could activate. One channel is going to be your direct marketing. How are you communicating marketing to students? Maybe you're utilizing different microsites and SEO and Google ads. Like, what are you doing currently to attract international students? The brand is going to be important. Are you a ranked university? Are you working with QS? Are you working with Times Higher Ed? Where is your brand in the world? And that marketing really helps to support all your recruitment channels. The other side is strategic partnerships, working with education agents abroad. Again, this is a great opportunity to activate that recruitment channel. You can utilize resources like ISEF, where you can meet different education agents and enterprises that will send students abroad. They usually work on a commission basis, which means you're not spending as much upfront sending someone around the world to recruit. So working with education agents is something I highly recommend, because they are your partners and they can help you to activate your recruitment channel in that country. And they will be candid with you. If they don't think they can recruit students for you, they're going to tell you right away. And keep in mind, they're working with students every day. The other recruitment channel would be education fairs, educational partnerships abroad. Those are good ways to start to activate. Going to an education fair, I think, talking firsthand to students is really important. I do think that there are a long-term commitment, because when you're going to meet students, many times they're early in their journey to looking for universities, but it is a good way to attract students, get your brand out there, and all these channels complement each other. So you have your marketing strategy, your go-to marketing execution plan. Digital is important, right? That's how students are searching. Social media. You have your education agents, having on-the-ground recruiters, doing recruitment fairs, as well as strategic partnerships with universities. I think these 4 channels are a great way to begin your strategy. And it can be complex. Many schools will start, into this journey, and they want, after a year, they're like, where are my enrollments? Where are my students? And it doesn't work like that. It is a relationship business. Students that study abroad will start talking to you 2 years before they choose to come to your university. I think it's really important that you understand that. You understand it's the brand of your school as well as your country, and understanding a full, holistic recruitment strategy is going to be important. Activating these recruitment channels and having the dedicated leadership. That's really important as you begin. Again, if there's any other questions or I can be of any help, my name is Angel Ahmed. I work with, my company is GNet Global Network. My email is angel@GNet Marketing. Please contact me with any questions. I'm happy to support you or just brainstorm with you if there's some advice that you need. Thank you.